Well, I would like to welcome you today. We are here to talk about John's new book. John Quinlan is, he's been a public CEO. He's been a CEO of international coffee company. He's a coach, educator, consultant, friend. He's been, according to the jacket inside of his book, he's been up, down, and all around. He co-founded and ran a publicly traded financial services holding company, building it to 330 employees in 14 states with 430 million in assets. John ended up closing that company, and he learned many lessons along the way, and this became his competitive advantage and ultimately the genesis for this book. He co-established a consulting and investment banking firm in Detroit. He left America for the other side of the world. He and his wife co-founded in remote Papua New Guinea, a certified organic and Rainforest Alliance coffee growing, collection, and exporting business. It grew and prospered into local greed and vengeance, culminating in an assassination attempt, forced the Quinlans to abandon this company. At least he still had his motorcycle stored back in Michigan. And John's first book, can you say the name, John? Taubata, is that right? Is wonderful. I couldn't put it down. I read it front to back in one sitting. John is an author, speaker, organization development specialist, and executive leadership coach. He holds a bachelor's degree from Albion College, a master's from American University in Washington, D.C. Okay, John, it's yours.
Thank you very much. The agenda's before you. There's my background. Why is Alignment Strong different from other leadership and management texts? It's road tested, it's in your face, it's rational, existential, very theoretical at times, and very personal. I want to connect again with the intentions and some norms right here, and we can move fairly quickly into the book itself. The intention is to take 50 years of business experience, moving into graduate school, the application of those tools in the consulting world, the business finance world, and then moving into a business opportunity in Papua New Guinea, living in a village, and then coming out of that, and coming back to America in executive coaching. And it's all the above. The intention is to relate as much as I can with reflections over the next 45 minutes to an hour. The norms right here is openness. I know there's friends here, there's connections already, American University. I love you, I appreciate you, and God bless you, Eddie, we're Edie and Charlie Seashore, wherever you are. Thank you for your contributions that you've made, including other mentors, even today, Bruce Gibb is one. I'd like to have a little fun in regards to the norms here. There are no wrong questions, and give me a break, there's no right answers. And I want to be easy and have some warmth right here. I was introduced to the metaphor of the campfire, where we can huddle together and open on up and feel vulnerable and have a good chat with one another as we move into the rest of the interaction. The WLC is a big formula that I created, the Wisdom Life Chart, and it's in the book, and it takes the 50 years, and there's a little library section, and it's experience plus knowledge plus self-reflection equals wisdom. And there's some beautiful quotes right there. One of my professors at American University, Robert Marshak, went up to a flip chart and said, the experience is the test, the lessons will follow. And that's pretty much been a hallmark of me getting into the weeds, for better or worse, and learning from it and then applying my knowledge, and then self-reflecting. And I believe at the age of ripe old age, for me, of 75 years old, that I have some wisdom to share with you. I think that the Huxley experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. I'm sharing some of that wisdom with you as we move on. The ancient metaphors are gripping to me. They were introduced to me by one of our participants, Bruce Gibb, in fact, and it's the baseline and understanding of alignment strong. It starts out with a hunting party, and over here, the hunting party is represented by the hierarchy of the village. And it has to be effective, it has to be efficient, it has to move ahead and organize itself to move ahead and have the right arms, the right utensils, the right fishing gear or hunting gear, be organized. Who's going to vet out the game, who's going to shoot, who's going to collect, who's going to carry it back, who's going to prepare the dinner, and let's make sure that the village doesn't starve. So that's the hunting party metaphor right here, the hunting party. And then you move on over, and there's a need then for the campfire, the circle, the campfire, where in Papua New Guinea, the campfire would be really the clan chiefs. So in the village that I lived in, there was one village chief and then 10 clan chiefs. And they would come together and they would have their sing-sings and talks and share their successes, share their failures, open up, connect, and give each other support. That's the campfire metaphor right there. And you go back and forth and you start to realize that you need both, and you need both in organizations today. Mm-hmm. The other image right here that plays would be the chief, and the chief really plays that integrating role, like chief executive officers today, or nonprofit directors today, or your senators today, your president today, etc. You have a chief that really is conscious of the integration of these two systems or mindsets. When I met a chief, this gentleman right here became a fairly good friend of mine from the village of Dea, and his name is Ezekiel. And I asked him, what are the qualities of a good chief? And he was very precise to say, well, you have to be known for how many pigs you have. You have to be known for how many acres that you own, hectares that you own, and the quality of your garden. And he said, number two, that you have to be an expert in what you're doing. You have to be respected for what you're doing. You know something about farming, you know something about hunting or fishing. Number three, that you have to have the wisdom to settle disputes where people trust you and they could come to you for advice. But he said, but more importantly, John, believe it or not, it has to do with my ability to organize good feast. My ability to have campfires, basically, and to have a good feast, to have it prepared, and to have good sing-sings and good talks. So the chief is kind of like the balancer right here. And this triangle is huge in understanding what alignment strong is about. And I thank Bruce Gibb for this. He did a paper on this, significant paper that he shared with me on this, and I've been using it since. Whether it's been governors or mayors or CEOs for the last 30 years, it's been very powerful. So this is a baseline. Now there's two descriptors. Let's fast forward with the two descriptors right now. And so this is modern America today with these two domains, and you go back and forth. And they've been opposing. You go to Wall Street and they oppose each other all the time. You go to politics, they oppose each other all the time. So the descriptor of the strategic centric, which represents this over here, all right, is the following points right there. Michigan efficacy, productivity, dashboards, ROI, value chain optimization, SWOT PESO analysis, then you can move over to the human-centric. Let's put that slide up right now.
Okay.
Human-centric is the culture, the embedded values, the vision. We're talking about campfire now, purpose and meaning, inspirational leadership, team performance, how are we doing? The emotional intelligence comes into play. You'll learn a lot about that in campfires. Agile learning, empowerment, growth mindset, job enjoyment, workplace happiness. That's the human-centric part. That's key. Historically, these have been viewed as opposites. Going back to grade school, the paradigm that was given to me is, oh, you have a choice. America has a choice. It's guns or it's butter. And you sit back and you fast forward like 40, 50 years, and we're still opposing one another in regards to budgets and agendas and policies. And that goes right in, of course, into the business world. And this is really a business text to a large degree right here. This is not where we are right now. I wanted to talk about the paradox and juxtapositions right now before we talk about this cultural research slide. The paradoxes and juxtapositions, and probably what was introduced to me in the early 80s, and I saw practiced, believe it or not, even at Ford Motor Company at the executive level, was Waterman and Peters in Search of Excellence. And the juxtaposition there, to be very precise, was they introduced, these two McKinsey consultants introduced loose and tight qualities, which impacted academia to say, what are they talking about? And of course, he would go around in America with the video and start to interview the excellent companies, like the guy that owned the garbage company in San Francisco, and he's interviewing him. And he says, well, with the Tinker Toy garbage truck on his desk, and he's half bearded, his hair is disheveled. And he says, let me tell you, Tom, this is Peters, I know garbage. I know how to collect it. I know how to dispose it. And I love it. And you're just shocked to say, you mean that type of passion, emotion is in corporate America, and that's important? Yes. So they brought in the campfire, the hunting, the loose, the tight. You better be tight in organization structure, mission efficacy. You better be tight with productivity, effectiveness, and efficiency, but you do need the campfire, the looseness as well. Fast forward to Jim Collins and Good to Great. So he was in search now of great companies, not excellent, great companies, right? And as opposed to good companies. And as he went into America and did his research, and it was similar to in search of excellence, that he came up with this criterion variable to say, oh my God, we weren't really in search of this, if you want to use that term, level type 5 leadership. And that was coined to say, you mean a CEO can do a campfire in the hierarchy at the same time? Yes. And the level type 5 leadership was marked that you could be very precise, you could be very, very firm and direct about performance, execution, and then at the same time, you could be humble. There's humility, there's connection, there's nurturing, there's coaching, there's caring. You could do the two at the same time. That was a beautiful juxtaposition right there. Now we can fast forward to the research of Dan Dennison. There we go right here. And of course, David McClellan, Daniel Goldman of EI fame, deep research that they did, very impactful for me as a practitioner to say, oh, we got metrics to measure culture. As Peter Drucker said, culture does eat strategy for breakfast, but we can prove it. We can quantify it now. And now we have the wonderful research from people like Dan Dennison in Ann Arbor, Michigan, who I've met. I consider a friend, thanks to Bruce Gibb. And then the EI, Daniel Goldman, he was very, very major And we have this right here that there's a direct correlation to, and my CEOs, of course, they say, oh, we didn't know this, that there is an impact on return on assets, sales growth, market value. And yes, there is. And now that, of course, is coming to the front right now. And it's just affirming the integration of the campfire to the hunting party and the leadership role, the impact that leaders have on that integration, on that balancing. Make no mistake about it. It's a huge component of Alignment Strong.
Mhm.
So I'd like to move off. We have good theory, and that was introduced to me, of course, the founder of OD. And there's nothing so practical as a good theory. Now academia today, the Academy of Management, the review, they're sitting back to say, you know, we got some good research and good theory, but we think that maybe we ought to let a little more practicality, a little hands-on, get in the weeds, and bring that into our repertoire for corporate America, for change, et cetera, et cetera. And I've always loved this particular definition. Yes, it is practical. And so is my book. It's I believe soundly theoretical and it's practical. Becoming Alignment Strong is pretty akin to people that come from the OD industry to the definition of organization development. I could not separate out in 35 years of practice the definition of OD and Alignment Strong. It's like glove and hand, the two. So it's planned. I prefer that it starts up at the top, yes, in terms of that type of social positional capital, and there it moves down through. And the interventions or the landmarks or the 10 components are the processes, the practices, and the systems. And I've seen it over 35 years, and it works. It's very, very practical. Now you can move to a little more theory right here in the next slide, which has to do the end game. And I'm not going to get into the second law of thermodynamics or to move into systems theory right here, but I can tell you, with the fundamental balance established, with these two domains coming together with the leadership, you will create the adaptivity and buoyancy, the homeostasis, to adapt to that environment and create sustainability, competitive sustainability. If you don't do that, you'll entropy. You won't be around if you do not adapt to the external environment. It just works that way. With that method, you couchly embed an appetite for change within the organization, and your members, the team, the organization will understand that change and transformation are ceaseless. It just doesn't stop. The book Spiral Dynamics was a wonderful read for me. You just keep spiraling and it really, really never stops. It's a beautiful, beautiful metaphor using that. So Alignment Strong, I believe, is theoretical, it's rational, it's practical, but it's very personal. Now I'd like to go to the ear of the wind. That particular, there it is there. And motorcycling to personal transformation, Robert Pirsig said, the real motorcycle you're studying is the motorcycle called yourself. You start to piece that together. As I started to write the book and got the manuscript, I ended up with a great, great publishing company, Greenleaf Publishing, and the developmental editor, Erin Brown, she was tough as nails. And she said, John, you need to put the personal chapters up in the front. And of course, I was vulnerable and I said, I'm not prepared to do that. I don't want to look foolish as a business book to talk about a motorcycle trip and the demasking and the contraction of my own ego to start out a business book. Like, business books don't start out that way usually. I acquiesced, and it was one of the better decisions I've made, and it's taught me a lot. In the Ear of the Wind, I'd like to just quote a little from you, a passage right here of how personal this got. That would be in the forward of the preface of the book. And it starts out this way. Are you with me? This is where it begins. On August 8th, 2018, Fiona and I departed Detroit, Michigan for our destination of Phoenix, Arizona. Our motorcycle journey would cover close to 4,700 miles in 26 days, mostly on state highways and county roads. One particular day, about 3 weeks into our trip, we found ourselves deep in Monument Valley in Utah, just north of the Arizona state line. Our Navajo guide was showing us a circular cliff rock formation known as the Ear of the Wind. The guide suddenly pointed down near my feet. Next to them was a boulder with an X carved in the surface. The guide instructed me to place my feet precisely on the marking. I did so and realized I was in perfect alignment with a weather-bleached pinyon tree and the archway circle in the cliff, carved out by wind and rain over 1,000 years, with the backdrop of a clear blue sky. The moment was galvanizing. I then hiked down to the trees and spread my arms. I immediately became an essential part of the alignment of the natural landscape in which I immersed. And Fiona snapped, my wife Fiona snapped my photo. When I viewed the photo, I could not see my face. In the shadows, my features were indistinguishable. I had become totemic, a symbol descriptive of my own journey and personal alignment. Later, I realized I had mirrored the Da Vinci's Vitruvian man. Fascinating. Our Navajo guide exclaimed, "You have no face." He seemed astonished, but I was not. I've been on the road, on the journey, all right, to find the right face. I pondered the implications of losing my face as the road lengthened and we continued our journey. My thoughts echoed the author Robert Pirsig, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Again, the real cycle you're working on is the cycle called yourself. I felt very natural and at ease, anonymous in the absolute quiet, natural setting, stripped of my defining features. Surely getting to the core of who you are should be this effortless. I was always taught that toil, struggle, control, and perfection were the real badges of courage, especially being once a publicly traded chairman and CEO. However, a quieter and more reflective path to the heart demands possibly a divergent type of courage. I'm recognized and not glamorized. I'm provoked, and again, open to being vulnerable. I wondered what this revelation meant for me as an executive leadership coach. What purpose did the no-face experience fulfill? What were the implications for me and my executive coaching clients once I returned to Detroit? That's an excerpt right there, and it pushed me. That Aaron Brown pushed me to start off. It's personal. Edgar Schein, in a Google presentation, he was immersed by 50, 60, 70 people from all over the world. And at the end, they still weren't understanding it. And he just looked at him and he said, "Don't you get it? It's all about relationships, stupid." And they looked at Edgar Schein and say, "I think he just called us stupid, but I think he was joking about it." But being personal and connecting makes a huge difference in the integration of the hunting party and the campfire. I hope I'm not going too quick right now, but I do want to make sure that this link is understood. There is a parallel to the people that I do coach. And if the CEO isn't willing to take the medicine himself, I'm not really interested in working in that system. Corn Ferry, it's a beautiful, it just brings it together for the lifelong learner, that the candidate, the growing awareness of the need for change, underscored by an intrinsic need, intrinsic to grow as a lifelong learner. DeWitt Carroll called that maybe the growth mindset, in fact. This person has a realistic sense of self, accepts feedback, and shows an earnest desire to improve. For me to do the work that I do, another flip chart right here, that there is a parallel track and you can't escape it. That there has to be the personal development from the chief, from the CEO. It has to be exemplified. And at the same time, the other track is the organization development track, the application of 10 components, for instance. And there has to be an intersect for competitive leadership. There has to be. Could we go to that slide right there in regards to just summarizing this? The parallel track for competitor leaders, it's a biggie, and it's taken me years to conceptualize this. And this really didn't come together for me until the preparation for the webinar. In regards to this little framework right there, there has to be an intersect. Now I remember in Good to Great, he said, when it comes together, there's a flywheel and it goes into hyper growth and space and things are never the same. It's kind of like a flywheel. If that CEO, that leader is doing this and the organization is being orchestrated with those 10 steps, they come together, they intersect, and they will have competitive leadership. And it begins and ends with the leader. Sorry to say, it begins and ends with the leader. And if the leader isn't in sync, then I believe that maybe the culture will determine that you aren't a good fit. And maybe it will adjust and do what it needs to do for it to have that particular intersect. So I'd like to move on and look at this Vitruvian man, which I think is fascinating right here. And I'm reminded as we move into the 10 steps of Da Vinci himself. And I was galvanized, of course, by the perfection of the perpendicular balance of the organization. But then when you get into Da Vinci, who was really the founder of modern science, and he incorporated art, he integrated art, the Last Supper, for instance, with machinery, and integrated the science and arts together. So he walked his talk. I'm bringing to you one example of the different perspectives that he brings to the table. So when we go into the 10 components, don't think for a second it's there. It's 40 years of me understanding what strategy means and how to use it and apply it. 40 years to put my arms around what a management performance system is. 40 years of understanding what strategic vision is. 40 years of working on core values, or what are the qualities of an adaptive org structure. 35, 40 years. So very, very different perspectives I'm given. So as we go through these slides right now for each one, it doesn't do us justice. You can read them and we can have a short question or two, but you really have to get into that book to get the deeper understanding of each one of these components. As an example with Da Vinci, make the bones of the foot somewhat separate. So this was his cut when he spent a year on 2 cadavers, an old man and an old woman in Florence back in 1509, where he went in as the father of anatomy. And here was a description of how he viewed just one component of the human body, as I would want you to look at one component of alignment strong and say, I thought I knew something about organization structures, but I had no idea they were that comprehensive, and the type of experience and knowledge that goes with it to really understand an application of organization structures today. Da Vinci, just the foot itself, to give you an understanding. Make the bones of the foot somewhat separated. one from another in such a way that one may readily distinguish one from another, and this will be the means of imparting the knowledge of the number of the bones of the foot and their shape. At the end of every representation of the feet, you will give the measure of the thickness and length of each of the bones and its position. Those are the 10 components as well. There's a comprehension to them, just like there is in regards to the thickness and length of each bone in the foot. That's how deep he went. The aspects of the foot are 6, namely below, above, within, outside, behind, and before. And to these is added the 6 demonstrations of the separated bones between them. And there are those of the bones sawn lengthwise in 2 ways, that it is sawn through the side and straight, so to show all the thickness of the bones. Use the same rule for the foot that you would use for the hands and the rest of the bones, the body parts. The 6 components that we're going to go over right now are pretty weighty. And it takes many of my clients at least 2 to 3 years to really apply and to move with this type of framework that I'm introducing to you right now.
And John, we have about 20 minutes left, so I just wanted to kind of give you that time.
Thank you.
Check.
So right now, we're going to go into just the quick presentation of each one of the components. So let's go, and you could take some notes as well. And on a 1 to 4 scale, as you went on in, you might have some fun and say, geez, I thought I had a great understanding, and maybe you do, or a very little understanding, and you can make a jot, you could jot something down for the Q&A a little on, but do that as we go along. So let's go to the first one right here in regards to values. And they're huge, and they come from somewhere, and usually they come from the background of the people that have the positional power of the organization, and it's the DNA, and it shapes and molds the culture. It's the bedrock of the culture, period. Mm-hmm. Let's go to number 2, the strategic vision. A galvanizing picture. It's 5 years later, and you look at the various perspectives of the strategic vision on page 43 right here, to give you, once the strategic vision is put in order and you're looking at the results of 5 years of work, the questions from the different angles. Does the vision statement convey a compelling picture of the enterprise in 5 years? Or is the opportunity to potentialize yourself apparent in this vision? Or where does the vision statement intersect with employees, customers, competitors, suppliers, and community? Or does it create a sense of belonging, hope, and excitement? There's 10 of these, like there would be 6 perspectives from Da Vinci. There's huge perspectives in each one of these. So let's go to the next one. The mission and the competitive advantage. Coming from a business background, without a competitive advantage, don't compete. You shouldn't be in business. It's that practical. It's the wheelhouse. I've seen more companies think that they knew what their products and service offerings were, and they didn't, and they went out of business. Or they caught themselves, grounded themselves, and to say, we have to have a clear understanding of who our customers are, our products and services, and how we differentiate ourselves. It's the wheelhouse of the company. It's not really a feel-good statement. It could make you feel good, but it's a statement that's very objective, very, very sacred to the organization. Let's go to the next one. Leadership team. This is a good one. That it's a combination that the CEO has to walk their talk and be vulnerable and create psychological safety. And for the members of that leadership team to do the same. The team is a reflection of the leader. When I go into an organization, it could take me just less than half a day to understand what the CEO is about without even understanding or meeting that CEO in any depth to understand what that CEO is about by the reflection of that core team. Mm. Let's move to the next one. Strategy. This is one of my favorites, coming from a business background, like competitive advantage and mission. Strategy, it's an acid test. You have a value proposition, whether you're for-profit or nonprofit. Is your value proposition different from your rivals? If you're trying to serve the same customers and meet the same needs and sell at the same relative price, you don't have a strategy. It's all in your head.
Right.
Number two, is your value chain tailored to meet customer needs, i.e. from customer inquiry to final invoice? Do your internal activity link to deliver products and services different from your competitors? If it were not the case, every competitor can meet the same needs and there'd be nothing unique or valuable about the positioning. And you sit there and go, it can't be that simple. But those are baseline tests in regards to a strategy that's incumbent to be articulated at the top of the company. Let's go to the next one. Goals and objectives. It's an art form. It's really the guts of the strategic plan itself, in light of a PESTLE analysis and a SWOT analysis. The dropping out of those strategic issues are formulated in goals and objectives that should go down into the next 2 to 3, 4 levels. And of course, the deeper down you go, the more they know about your business. Mm-hmm. So if you can get them involved in goal setting and align their purpose, their excitement and passion within goal setting, you got something really special. Let's go to the next one. Organization structure. This was a biggie. You want to go into theory on this? Let's talk about a functional statement versus a product and service statement versus a matrix organization structure, or is it ad hoc and it's all the above? And how do you test your org structure for the delivery of your competitive advantage and to make it easy to do business with your company? Without that type of examination and application, you are wasting a lot of resources in your company. The information flow, the accountability flow is really, really impacted by an org structure itself. Let's move to another one. Department mission statements and value chain. It's looking at your company, not vertically, old time thinking, the old time hierarchy, but horizontally, and the links from a customer inquiry to an invoice. And those links are your department heads, functional departments, that they should have defined missions with defined outputs that become, all right, the inputs to the next link. So to have clear mission statements and an understanding of a horizontal value chain right to the end user is huge, which will support the corporate mission statement in alignment itself. Next one. Individual objectives management performance system is where the rubber meets the road, that you are really, really moving in to the connection of personal needs and passions of individuals and their contributions that they want to make based on their own strengths, their value, their value propositions. If you inquire, they do have one, and align that to the departmental missions that support the corporate mission of the organization. That's through a performance management system that is collaborative. It's more frequent. It's like a campfire within a campfire, where you connect to people, you evolve individuals, very different from still the moronic annual performance review that ties your assessment of your performance and giving feedback to compensation and rewards. Let's go to the next one. Integrated culture. I guess coming from a spiral dynamics background, it's the top of the spiral where it all comes together at the turquoise. And thank you, Claire Graves, because it really honors individuals and respects them and makes them feel appreciated, makes them part of the whole. That's an ethos that develops. The CEO becomes the orchestrator. It's almost effortless that the CEO knows the wallpaper of his own company, the culture of his own company, and what the external environment demands, and he can adapt with the right management, decision-making styles and processes. The members feel that they know each other way, way, way more than a non-integrated culture. They see the commonalities. It meets deep, affirming human nature needs. That's a combination of the other 9 where you move into alignment strong. How long does that take? For me, after doing this for 30 years, probably at least 2 to 3 year commitment to see those type of results that they're talking about in regards to Denison, the correlation to those financial matrix. I've given you a load right here, and I want to keep to the timing, so I'm doing pretty good, Kimberly.
Yes, you are.
So you pulled the gun with me right here, and I just want to open it on up. Let the fur fly in any one of the components, or your 1 to 4 to say, I thought I had an understanding of strategy, but I didn't, but I surely do now. And these are the reasons why, as an example, but I'd like to open it up for any questions.
And I have to stop sharing so I can see the chat. So if you want, feel free to put something in the chat. We have questions from Maria. Will there be further classes and offerings on this topic? Question 2, how does executive coaching fit in the organizational development initiatives? And how to influence leaders who want to be right and have the abrasive style? There's a lot there.
There sure is. First of all, and believe me, I got sensitive feelings about hawking a book. It ain't me. I don't like it, but I guess they say that that's the way it works. So if you want a deeper dive, it's in the book. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of this was not to sell books, although I've been reminded, I guess it is, but it doesn't fit. I'm just telling you straight up, it doesn't rhyme with me at a deep level, but I'm doing it. It's in the book. In regards to the appetite for executive coaching, you know that the potential may be there for that top person to be open to inquiry, to examine the hidden area and their blind spots. Those are always good indicators right there that a person is open to executive coaching. Within the book, there's an executive coaching template to assess what those objectives would be for an executive coach. And from an OD perspective, it just rhymes with the interventions that you're equipped to plug on in your coaching repertoire. What was the last one right there? What do you do with jerks?
No, so yeah, sort of like that.
Yeah, what do you do with resistors? For me, maybe 4 to 5 occasions in my lifetime. It's the handshake. This isn't working. I don't think there's a fit. I don't think that you're open to change. These are the following reasons. What do you think? You'd be better off to work with someone else. Usually it's been the opposite, that properly framed and sensitive, using more of a Rogerian approach and humble inquiry. I've had great success over the last 35 years.
Can you take a comment as opposed to a question?
Absolutely.
I just have a comment. Having been a professional, just retired after 52 years of practicing law and owning my own company, I found as I'm reading the book, and as John knows, I'm very slow at that because I keep going back and forth to it, that it really covers almost everything in life, not just being a CEO of a company or a leader of a business. And John, your passion in this address really came through. I want to tell you how much I appreciate it and you. And of course, I will be finishing the book, but I would like to just say I recommend it for anybody. You don't have to be a CEO. You don't have to be a leader. There's so much in it about interpersonal relationships, let alone business relationships. So I want to thank you for giving me the invitation to attend this webinar, and it's been very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Phil. And I have added the book to my leadership readings for my leadership theory and practice class. So the thing I loved about this book when I first read it is, well, first of all, the STP model got me all excited. Looking at the state, your target, and your plan. It was just laid out so clearly. But then as I read on, the holistic manner in which you're addressing organizations, right? It's not a Band-Aid. It's not a quick fix. I mean, you really, how to create change at the cellular level, right? And I think that's just so important for every organization today, no matter what type of organization it is, that it creates and adopts these kind of principles.
I have a question, actually, a statement, if you don't mind me chiming in.
Absolutely.
Todd Hohauser, CEO of Harvey Hohauser and Associates. We're fortunate enough to work with John for, over half a decade. It's been a great journey. And where we did start with the values, just as John laid out in his Vitruvian model there. And I've talked to other folks, other CEOs, other leaders of organizations about going on this journey and building an organization, because I'm looking in the rearview mirror 5-6 years later with my stress is way down. I've got a team that's a highly performing team. My brother and I own this company. I would put our sibling partnership against any sibling partnership in the world. It's strong, and we're just feeling good about our relationship, our partnership, and our business. I don't know if I knew it was going to be a 5-year journey. And John was saying it's 2 years really to get into it. And we saw the results after the 2 years. But sorry for the long ramble. The question is, John, what do you say to somebody who has an organization that's not performing, and you just know it's going to take some time? How do you convince that person that, hey, we live in this visceral, instant gratification world? Yeah, I'm not going to come in and fix your business by reading this book and doing 3 things. It's going to take some time. What do you say to folks like that, John?
But it's what you don't say. That if they had any idea of what you vision and where you want to take them, they would, soil their pants. And they would have no comprehension. They would be so driven at that point. So you move to the vision, and you get excited, and then you break down that elephant burger, or that elephant, into elephant burgers, and you go to a basic tenet of change. It's very incremental and imperceptible. But if you're good at what you're doing, you'll identify what those elephant burgers would be in those interventions to get a sense of forward motion where they start to grasp, you know what? I feel good about executing this. What's the next step, Mr. Quinlan? And it's very incremental. It's imperceptible. It takes a lot of humbleness and patience and love in terms of what you're doing.
I see Dr. Roland Livingston has a question.
Yeah, so my question, John, is as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking that in order for this to really work, it requires an individual to be reflective. And so I wonder how you help a client, someone whom you're coaching, understand the importance of reflection and committing themselves to actually do the reflection that's needed to move through this model.
Roland, as you evolve and get older too, because wisdom, it goes way beyond having your wisdom teeth removed. And you start to understand the tools that have been given to you, so you make it palatable, and you bring in enough objectivity to make it safe. So when I move to the existential piece, I don't use the word existentialism. I'll pull out the Jack Gibb Tory model. Who am I? Who are you? What do we do? How do we do it? And you move to the higher levels of the team. And they said, well, what do you mean by who am I? I said, well, we can improvise right now. Let's do a personal SWOT analysis and understand your strengths and your weaknesses and the threats that you see and opportunities. So you bring some objectivity into it and make it safe. And they go into exploration and they don't even understand they're moving in the exploration until they see the results. And I didn't know that about myself. Then you move to another step and you make it real safe and easy. You build a lot of trust, Roland. Without that chemistry, I don't think you get anywhere with the individual that you're working with.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna share the screen again, and because I want to show your book. And one thing I want to. Uh-oh. Is it me?
There's another individual.
Okay. I want to say that there's about 50 pages in this book of exercises. And that is one thing that I really loved about this book is you have a lot of exercises that help people on the principles that you bring forth in the book. And I think that's a great tool because, you know, you can say it, but you have the exercises that really help people put it into play. Yeah.
I saw someone else's face. Who was that?
Well, hi, John. This is Doug Mobley. I have a question.
Okay.
Now, and just in all transparency, John, I hope you don't mind me sharing. Me and John are elders at Jefferson Avenue Presbyterian Church. So, as elders, that's one example of how John is really putting his money where his mouth is. So I'm just sharing that with the group. My question for you, John, however, and I love him as a brother, by the way. My question for you, John, is as a newly minted CEO who's just starting out his organization with 14 members and looking to expand, I'm taking the point of view of how do I implement this from the get-go? I hope that makes sense. But instead of, I know a lot of times in your experience, you have to step in organizations and rework things from the root up. But I have opportunity to implement this as the tree grows. Do you have any suggestions for me?
I can only affirm and reinforce what you're doing already. And you're taking a long look at other practices and experiences. So that tells me right there that your ego's in a good place. It's in a learning place. And that in itself is something that you can exemplify right day one with your team, because if you're going to be that way, it permits them to be that way. And you got the basis, you got some basics right there, some blocking and tackling of evolving and building that team, because that will be the vehicle to your success. That will be that team. So I think that you're doing some real good thinking and reflection. You can read the book and you know me, and you're aggressive enough, Quinlan, for a freebie, and you're going to buy me lunch. I know what I need to do. I know you well enough.
I was thinking about a cup of coffee just to be fiscally responsible. Okay.
You.
Oh, that's so funny. John, it was a pleasure. And every time I speak with you, I learn new gems. And I just want to thank you for today. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really, thanks, John.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Really, thank you.
You're welcome.